Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our interviews with successful real estate investors. And I've put together the top 7 key market drivers I look at when analyzing a real estate market. Go to topmarketdrivers.com to download your free copy. Our guest today controls a portfolio valued at over $150 million, along with over 800 investors, and teaches nearly 5,000 students annually about real estate. Neal Bawa is the founder and CEO of Grocapitus. Neal, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me on the show, Seth. It's quite a handful to have that many students.
I can imagine. But I guess, one of the good things is, you're now in the position to be able to give back and pass along your knowledge, right? So that must be pretty rewarding to see your students start to have some success.
It's a huge driver for me. I like putting up, data-driven courses on udemy.com and my website, multifamilyu.com. And I recently looked at udemy.com and looked at my flagship course there. And there were 5,000-6,000 people taking it right now. So that felt really good. And, they send me emails, and Udemy doesn't give us their email address, so they have to email me. And I often get emails from them. It feels really good.
That's really cool. Well, let's shift over to you. What are your real estate goals right now, and where are you looking to go with real estate?
All of the goals that I had for real estate are shot at this point in time. I think that any kind of goals that I put in place, and we follow a writer called Cameron Herold, and Cameron Herold's a writer who wrote Double Double and The Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, really well-known writer, phenomenal guy. And so we use his concept of a vivid vision for our company, and a vivid vision is a 3-year vision of what the future could look like. And so we wrote a 3-year vision, and what was bizarrely good was that we were on track to hit our 3-year vision in this year until March, right? So, and now we're back on, okay, well, then maybe that is a 3-year vision, right? Thanks to, the coronavirus, challenge that has been thrown our way. So honestly, we are in the process of redefining our goals, understanding why we exist, re-understanding why we exist, because some of the reasons why we exist those reasons may no longer exist, right? So, I mean, to us, this is not a bump in the road. We understand that the coronavirus, the damage that it has done to the world economy is so phenomenal that we're looking at something that could be unprecedented in its scope and could be around for years and may basically change the way that real estate is valued. So we hope that doesn't happen, but we certainly wouldn't bet that that's not going to be the case. So right now we're in the process of really understanding what's happening in the marketplace and rewriting all of our goals, right? And I mean, our portfolio is fairly big. It's $260 million at this point in time, very large number of investors, and a lot of them are actually in the same boat as us. And so what we're doing is every week we hold a town hall, and the town hall is kind of similar to what we are doing right now. We bring on 2 speakers. Each week it's a different speaker. Sometimes it's debt, sometimes acquisition, sometimes it's the CARES Act. So we're doing different sets of speakers, and we maxed out our Zoom license at 500. So we always have 500 people on there. And we're trying to learn from what the audience is saying, and we're trying to learn from what all of these other people in the industry are saying, to try and figure out what our approach should be. Certainly, my current approach isn't to be buying or building what I was doing. So I was building massive $55 million, 240-unit projects. I'm not looking to do that in the future. Though, the ones that I'm building that are in the pipeline, well, good. They've already passed the hump, right? They don't have any tenants for the next 18 months. Yay, they already have a loan, so check. But in terms of new ones, I'm not looking to do that. And also, I'm not looking to do value add. My typical value add was, a $20, $25 million property. The last one that we bought was about $24 million. And I'm not looking to buy those either because, to be honest, I don't know how to value them anymore. And I don't trust anybody that says that they know how to value them, right? Because if they do, then they must have a really good functioning crystal ball. Mine's been malfunctioning for a number of years. So to me, I don't think that there's a way of really understanding and evaluating how to know what the price of assets is in the marketplace. So I'm not doing those things. So far what I've been doing is basically building collections of quadplexes. And I like those because the quadplex market is extremely liquid. because it's a single family asset, not a multifamily asset, even though I can either sell it to individual investors as quadplexes, so I'm very liquid when I need to sell, and also I can sell it, I can get my whole collection together and sell it to a multifamily investor if, conditions improve. And so I like that, and what I like about it the most is that quadplexes can be built in 9 months, whereas what I was building before, the 240 units, well, that's a 30-month construction and lease up, where quadplexes are a 10-month construction and lease up. So that's a pivot. And to be honest, instead of doing the home runs that I was doing with the 240 units, doing single, these quadplex projects are, they're like $8 million instead of 40 or 50 million. But they're a lot less risky. They're, at least in this environment, lots of exits, lots of different buyers, short time frame. So that's what I'm looking to do. I'm pivoting. And is that what I really want to do? I'm not sure. But it's something that makes sense today.
I should throw in there, just for people listening in the future, we're recording this at the end of April in 2020. So we are smack dab in the middle.
Very interesting time, right?
Yeah.
I often tell podcast hosts, this is a good time for you to call people back 90 days from now and see if they have egg on their face, because I have no idea whether what I'm saying is going to mean anything in 90 days or not. Right? Yeah. So it's like an unprecedented time. So that, this is the greatest of all black swan events we've had in our history. Nothing comes close to it.
Obviously, I mentioned in the introduction, you have a large amount of investors in these deals with you. Walk us through your process for reaching out to those investors whenever there's uncertainty and fear in the market. What are you doing to take a proactive approach and really add that customer service aspect?
First thing, don't sell anything. Because at this point, firstly, you're going to have a really, really tough time selling anything. You're going to lose a lot of faith. Your investors are going to lose a lot of faith because they're like, well, he's acting as if nothing has changed, right? Also, this is a time to become that credibility focal point by doing webinars about what's happening in this situation. How is it changing real estate? If you're a student housing guy, talk about how it's changing student housing. If you're a senior housing guy, talk about that. So I think this is a time, number one, your investors that are already invested, double the amount of time that you're spending with them. So we're doing updates twice a month now. We were doing monthly updates, and they're beautifully designed updates that have videos and pictures. I mean, our updates are marvelous. They're like beautifully crafted. We have basically half a virtual assistant in the Philippines whose job it is to get these updates exactly right. So what we're doing is, we're doing that monthly update, but then we're also sending them, mid of month updates, because right now I think there's just anxiety. They're anxious. So if you've got investors that are in existing projects, reach out to them more often. That's number one. What about the investors that haven't invested with you at this point in time, but you want to communicate with them? Well, the best way to communicate with them is to provide information about what's happening in the industry. Be that source. I mean, it's really easy. Right now, I've never received this much COVID spam ever. I mean, I get, 50 emails a day. I can easily take content from that and put my email together. I'm not saying I'm doing that, but I'm suggesting you should do that. There's nothing wrong with that, because it's information from a reliable source. If you take information from a Marcus and Millichap newsletter, source it, right? Have a little asterisk at the bottom. You can have that in 6-point text if you like, but source it and then send that out to people. In my mind, that is the best thing that you can do today. Aggressively trying to sell something is going to burn a bunch of relationships. So be very careful not to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And, you had mentioned how, you're not doing value add or any new construction right now. When you first got it started—
Well, new construction I am, but not large new construction, because there's no way to get loans easily, right? So I'm doing smaller new construction, but go ahead. Yes.
For sure. Yeah. So how did you get started in the larger multifamily properties? Were you doing value add first, or were you constructing first? And then how did it go together?
Yeah, so my case was very atypical, right? Most people, when they start in real estate, they start with one of two things. Either they start with a single family rental, or they start with private lending, right? So those are kind of very popular, or they maybe fix and flips, right? So these are three popular ways. My first real estate gig, if you want to call it that, was to build a $6 million campus, custom campus from scratch for my technology company. I was chief operations officer. So part of my job, my CEO, brilliant guy, would throw me at projects that I had absolutely no idea about, and that was kind of his way of having me learn. So he threw me off the deep end, and he's like, we're going to build this $6 million campus. You're going to help me, and let's do it. And I'm like, but I don't know anything about real estate. And he's like, yes, we're going to learn. So we learned, we broke a bunch of things, but at the end, in 2003, we had this sparkling, gorgeous campus that we had built, and in 18 months it was full, so we bought the building behind us, which was much larger, much more expensive, and this time we didn't have enough money, so we did a unusual, informal syndication. And so we learned how to syndicate and raise money from people. But again, all of it was being done for our technology company. There really weren't, the typical sort of syndication investors and their friends and family, mostly certain local doctors. And so we learned that, and then I started going the route of single family, bought 10 single families in 2009 during the crash, then bought 10 triplexes in Chicago, and then got into passive syndications, then started getting into active syndications, started writing my own real estate metrics about how to find the best cities and neighborhoods in the US. And that sort of grew over time. People started coming to my presentations, then people started inviting me to podcasts, and then they started inviting me to conferences. So it sort of snowballed over a lot of time while I was still in my technology career. And my tech company didn't get sold until 2013. So it was a very slow and gradual process, and I really enjoyed the slowness of that. I didn't really jump in. It was like, I'm making all this moolah on the tech side. I'm not going to just give it up easily.
For sure. And I think that's one of the things, a lot of beginner real estate investors, they want everything to happen overnight, and they don't understand it's a multi-year process.
It is. And nothing wrong with saying, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to give it my all. I think that's fine. There's nothing wrong there. I had a lot to lose. I had this technology company that I had stakes in, and until it was sold, I would be giving up millions and millions of dollars of stakes. So don't get me wrong. I think that there's something to be said for saying, okay, I'm just going to jump in and make this happen. And if you might be wondering, is now the time to do that? The time is, it's a lot better than the last 4 years, because there's blood in the water, or actually, I should say, there's going to be blood in the water in about 90 days. You know that the blood in the water is coming. So you're in this unusual position of being able to reach out to investors and share with them your blood in the water philosophy. And then 90 days from now, buy assets that are cheaper than were available in February or Jan of this year. So I think it's a great time to get started. Whenever there's blood in the water is a great time to get started.
Yeah, for sure. And, what sort of routines and rituals then have you developed? You mentioned people asked you to speak at conferences and all that stuff. So what have you done to develop yourself to make sure you transform into a successful investor?
Well, one of the things is that if you start to believe in something, go and find a quote that matches that. And then say that quote as often as possible, because it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on you to be true to that, right? So, one of my favorites is that, data beats gut feel by a million miles. I say that a lot. And when you're saying it all the time, you start to believe that. And so you tend to become more data-driven, and people around you tend to become more data-driven, right? So I actually went out and invented a humorous version of that quote, and it's probably the only quote I've invented in my life. But the quote goes, the Bible was wrong by one letter. It is not the meek that shall inherit the earth. It's the geek, right? It's the geek. Richest man in the world, geek. Second richest, geek. Third richest, geek. Do you see a pattern developing, Seth? Do you see a pattern here?
I do. I should change my background to Star Trek or something.
I know. I mean, the fact of the matter is the geeks are taking over the world because they tend to use data in a very unique way. A lot of people think Amazon is successful because they're in e-commerce. No. E-commerce is really the easiest thing in the world to get into, right? There's 1,000 new e-commerce stores that open in the U.S. every day. Imagine the barriers to entry are so low. Anyone can set up an e-commerce store for less than $200. So why is Amazon successful? That's because they're not an e-commerce company. They're a data company, right? They're a company that sifts through massive amounts of data and uses the insights to create a unusually powerful position in the marketplace. So going back to your question, what you've got to do is, if you believe in something, you've got to find quotes that match that. And then say those over and over again. That becomes your routine. That becomes your life, your style, right? The other thing is that you need to have a daily routine that's very important, right? So I prefer the miracle morning routine, which is, savers, So you start at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then you've got S, which is silence or meditation, and then you've got A, which is affirmations, B is visualization, E is exercise, R is reading, and then the final S is scribing, so writing down both personal and work goals. So what I do is actually I finish with scribing, and I scribe in a journal called the High Performance Brendan Burchard Journal. And so when I finish scribing, I scribe in 2 sections. One section is personal, one section is work. And when I finish scribing, it's right around 7:30 a.m. in the morning, and I take my phone and I take a picture of the work portion, and I post it into the Slack channel that my 3-person executive assistant team sees. So now at 7:30 in the morning, they know the things that right now are top of mind for me. So when they call me at 8 a.m., often they're very ready. They're very ready because they've already seen a picture, right? That's a routine, and I practice that routine every day. And sometimes that picture only has 2 items, and sometimes it has 10. It depends on how my mind was feeling after meditation and after yoga and exercise. And so sometimes it's running very fast, and sometimes I'm in a very peaceful state. So that kind of daily routine is critical for success, especially, and this is tied back to my idea that the greatest book of all is Miracle Morning. Why? Because it gives you the ability to read all the other books that might be greater than Miracle Morning, right? Yeah. So there might be a book X out there, which is actually 10 times better than Miracle Morning, but you probably won't ever read X because you never have the time. What the Miracle Morning does is it gives you 20 minutes a day to read whatever you want. And so if you exercise it, you'll end up reading thousands of books, right? Which again, may be much better than Miracle Morning. So think of Miracle Morning as the book that allows you to read all the other books that you want. So having that routine, that daily routine, it moves you, it elevates you to a different level of performance, right? Having a accountability buddy. I have a buddy, his name's Darren. I post on his Facebook Messenger every day, when I'm done with Savers, and he posts, and whatever I'm reading, I tell him, and whatever he's reading, he tells me. So I use that accountability system so that I don't get away from it, right? I post my weight and my eating habit each day to a coach on coach.me. So a lot of these are routines, but I'm building accountability partners, in certain cases paid accountability partners, in other cases free accountability partners, so that I don't get off the routine.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head because so many people, they have good intentions when they start a new routine, but it's so easy to fall off the cart or go off the rails if you don't have somebody keeping you accountable.
And I tell people, ask me how many times I've fallen off my routine, and then the answer is hundreds of times. Yeah. It's really not important how often you fall off. It's important how often you get back on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Well, let's shift on over to a Keystone deal. So a deal that made a big impact on you and your business, is there one that comes to mind?
Oh yeah, there's an instant answer to that question. And this was a deal that we did in 2015, and I had a partner, good partner, hardworking man, ethical man. He and I did the deal together, and it went wrong, and still is wrong. I mean, at this point, we're still working on trying to get 100% of investor money back, so 5.5 years later. And the reason that the deal went wrong is that we made an assumption that I will never make again. And that assumption was, let's go into an area that's fairly distressed, low rents, low quality tenant base, but it has something really good happening, which we think is going to, over 2, 3, 4 years, improve the quality of that area. In this instance, this was a portfolio, 237 units, that was near Jackson Park in Chicago, in a neighborhood called South Shore. And South Shore is a fairly distressed neighborhood, and the tenant quality is not good at all. It's a poor tenant quality, very low scores. But there were a lot of good things that were happening when we were looking at this. President Obama was looking to build a $1 billion presidential library. And we knew through some back channels that his wife, who had lived in one of our 6 portfolio properties for a few months as a child, wanted it built in Jackson Park, which was directly opposite our property. And having a $1 billion library with other pieces built opposite us would obviously be a game changer. We also knew that President Obama had Tiger Woods as his friend, and next to the library, the spot that they were trying to build the library was the South Shore Golf Club, and Tiger Woods was talking about buying the golf club and turning it into a PGA Championship golf course in his name. And then there were some other things happening which were even bigger than this, that were like 2 miles south of us. And so we looked at all of this and said, yeah, it's a problematic area, but it's going to improve because all this great stuff is going to happen. Well, here's what happened. The Friends of Jackson Park put a lawsuit against the Obama Presidential Library, dragged it through the mud for 4 years. So now, 4 or 5 years after we purchased, the library's construction still hasn't started. Tiger Woods decided, I'm going to wait until that library is built before I build my golf course. And that $4 billion project 2 miles south of us completely got canceled. The McCaffreys were involved in that, which is Chicago's richest family. They just gave up on it. And so we ended up with a project which had so many potential good things. And the library is being built, right? So that will happen. But it took many years longer than we thought. So what I learned from that was simply this. Don't buy based on future quality of an area. Don't buy in an area that's shitty. Because if it doesn't happen, you're going to be trapped and your investors are going to be trapped. That's the lesson that I learned, and I take that forward and hopefully not buy in those kinds of areas again.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good story. So, when you first saw the deal, was it, the future potential, like the gentrification of the area that attracted you, or was there like another value add component to it?
There was value add, but I think the big driver was the gentrification. Yeah. We were buying at $50,000 a unit. And if the area gentrified and we sold at $75,000 or $80,000 a unit, it would have been a home run, right?
Yeah.
So today, 5 or 6 years later, with 5 years of no cash flow and lots of negative cash flow, we've got to sell at over $75,000 or $80,000 just to, break even essentially and make, investor money back. So could we lose investor money there? Yeah, I worry about it all the time, and I think that there's a possibility that we'll lose some investor money. I can't think of what we've done, what we really would have done different after we bought it, right? So this was one of those deals where the mistake was in the buy. If you want to call it a mistake, I'm not even sure the word mistake applies. I think what applies is that there needed to be a different philosophy, right?
Yeah.
But to me, I think it was one of those deals where I look at that and said, maybe in the future I would have done, something different, or actually certainly would have done something different.
Yeah, and I always like talking about the deals that go off the track because you actually learn a lot. You learn more from those deals than the deals that everything goes right and everything looks all rosy. So,
I think the everything goes right deals actually often drag you off in the wrong direction. So try not to be influenced by those.
Yeah. So you're in that position with that deal. You realize things aren't happening as quickly as I'd like them to. As the syndicator, as the person running the deal, how do you have those conversations with your investors? Because obviously the investors have questions and wondering why they came in the deal with you and all that stuff. So how do you approach that?
With honesty, with constant updates on what's happening. Don't bullshit them. Tell them how it is. Tell them about your challenges. I think that we've had some very frustrated investors, but for the most part, that investor majority knows that we've been working hard on this. And so they've stuck with us. There hasn't been anybody that wants to sue us. There hasn't been anybody that wants to flame us on the internet. There have been people who have understood that we meant well, we worked hard for 5 years without any profit or return, that we could have done a better job when we were selecting the project, and probably done a better job of managing it too, but that there was no malintent whatsoever. I think a lot of our investors understood that because of our very candid and straightforward way of communicating with them.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you highlighted the communication part, because a lot of people, you hear stories where something starts going wrong and then it's hard to get a hold of the person. They stop answering emails, they stop picking up the phone. You almost have to do the reverse and over communicate.
Yes, I really think you have to over-communicate. And that's been one of my founding principles. I've been in projects with partners where they didn't share that belief, and it was very frustrating. Yeah. So to me, I think if the project's not going well, over-communicate.
Yeah. So let's talk about the impact real estate has had on your life and how it's changed your life. You know, you went from your tech company to now you're doing real estate and you've got all these amazing things going on. How has your life changed once you jumped, 100% into real estate?
I feel like I'm closer to my potential, right? I was running a technology company, 400 employees, doing lots of great things. The company got sold for a class-leading valuation. So all of those made me feel good. I was part of something great. But with real estate, I feel like I'm growing to my potential. I have a large number of people following me. I think somewhere around 30 or 40,000 people following me. I look at what they're doing with the data that I provide, the analytics that I provide, and it makes me feel good. And the quality of life is better. When you're in technology, especially if you have a big fat tech salary like I do, the guys with the big fat tech salary, internally, they're always terrified that one day their company is going to say, you know what, I could give his salary to 3 different people and replace this guy and get more value out of those 3 people. And so you're always terrified that that could happen to you. I don't have that fear anymore. People ask me, what has really changed with regards to your daily routine when it comes to coronavirus? And the answer is not much, apart from the fact that there were some meetups and conferences that I would be teaching at. The rest of my day looks the same. That's because before the coronavirus, I had engineered a perfect day for myself. And I'm continuing along that path. In fact, this is a little bit more perfect because I'm not spending as much time on planes and doing those kinds of things. So the ability to do that is, I think, the biggest benefit of real estate. Yes, it's money, but you'll get to the point where you could have gotten money in a different way. But if you're getting into real estate, part of it has to be about enrichment of life, of lifestyle, of having, flexibility of time. And I think that is not something you can get in a tech job.
Yeah, no, and like you talked about your perfect day. How long did it take you to actually create that perfect day? Because I'm sure you tried some things that didn't work, and then you did different things and all that.
Years. I think, and it will take you years as well. But the beautiful thing is that every time a new piece clicks in, your life gets better, and that drives you forward to experiment and to come up with another method that works, and then another method, and then another method. In my case, I have an army of virtual assistants. I have 18 virtual assistants that are full-timers with me. They're in the Philippines. We have 8 people in the U.S. as well. But and one of the things that I experimented with is, how could I make my life better by using my virtual assistant? A lot of people use virtual assistants for everything from finding podcast hosts to doing accounting and bookkeeping. But I've been able to use my virtual assistants to actually make my life better. And I think that, if a virtual assistant is $5 an hour, so over a year, if you put in $10,000 so that this virtual assistant can be involved in 100 parts of your life that you normally find irritating or annoying, that $10,000 is the best 10 grand a year that you can possibly spend.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head with, it's all about time, because you can't create more of it, right? Yeah.
You can, but the process of time creation is not about creating more time. It is about creating more free time. While no one can create more than 24 hours in a day, it's very, very possible to create more free time in a day. That is just an intention-driven process.
Yeah, actually, that's a good way to put it. So let's look ahead. So 10 years, where do you see yourself and your business in a decade?
Not here. So the short answer is, I wouldn't want to be doing more of what I'm doing. So right now I have a $250 million portfolio. People might say, well, if you get in 10 years to $1 billion portfolio, is that going to make you happy? And the answer is no. I'd like to have that $1 billion portfolio, but I want to be chairman instead of CEO. So part of my goal is to create people in my company that are smarter than me, better than me, may not be as experienced as me today, but that's the process they learn, and then put them in place so that they can drive the company, so I can be chairman and show up twice a week, pat people on the back, yell at a couple others, and then go off to do whatever it is that I'm doing, that I want to do at that point of time. And part of the allure of that 10-year looking forward is, I don't really know what I'm going to be doing in 10 years. And that's what makes it exciting. But am I going to be doing what I'm doing now in 10 years? Absolutely not, because for me, that would be a failure.
Yeah, I like that answer. Neal, if somebody's looking to reach out, you've got your education component, you've got the investing component. If somebody wants to learn about the deals you're doing, the courses you have, where can they find you?
So we created a portal that initially was a multifamily portal. It's called Multifamily followed by the letter U.com. U stands for university. So multifamilyu.com. So we created that as a multifamily portal, and then we realized that it was very narrow. And so we basically created it into something that's all aspects of commercial and single family real estate. We love doing webinars even before the coronavirus. And roughly 40,000 people a year attend our webinars. And they're deep dive webinars that last 90 minutes, lots of content, and we do them in two different formats: structured, PowerPoint-driven webinars, and then town halls, where there's 4 different speakers, and the town hall is a deep dive on one topic. So it could be senior housing, and the next day could be student housing, and then could be something else like Airbnb. So those kinds of products are done through multifamilyU.com. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me. My email address is really simple, neal@multifamilyU.com. Another way to get in touch with me simply is to listen to Google me. As it happens, I have the extreme luck of being the only Neal Bawa on the internet. So hit Neal Bawa, hit enter, and you'll see about 100 podcasts. You'll see about 24 conferences that I've presented at, that I've put content online. Some of that content is visible. You'll see my Udemy course. You'll see all the different websites around. Probably also see my portfolio. So that's probably the best way to connect with me.
No, that's awesome. Well, Neal, really enjoyed our chat. Really enjoyed some of the lessons and the deal story you had for us. So just want to say thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on the show. Stay safe.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And to you, our listeners, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.